How are you? Nice meeting you. Sort of thing.
Actually, I got one from work. I could just take my name badge off and put this one on.
I'm Jerome. Yourself? Not bad. Good. There's an actual website. It's actually just being kind of put in the middle. Well, you know what? Because I finally got the domain back, so I took the book here and actually how doing it. 2 years. Next year. I said don't put a lot of time into it because I know things are semi-important right now. So can you, when it gets, and then you just, I'm hosting it. Hold on. So we got a hosting company. Can you add me when you get it? You're okay with somebody playing?
Put red on so people go, oh, this person is saying hello to yourself.
Mine's not on until then they take responsibility for it. Can you add me as an agent? Yeah. And then I can go. Get up and just stand up and do who am I? Perfect. Excellent.
Ready to go.
Where are you sitting? Please find a seat. I'd like to call this meeting to order. If that's possible. Laurel, thank you for being the co-greeter today, and Doug Fisher. Where did Doug go? I'm here. Back. Milligan, Doug and Thur were the greeters today. Gerald, how's your voice for Canada today? You're on holidays, you should be well rested.
Oh, Canada, our home and native land, true patriot love, in all thy sons commend. With glowing hearts we see thee rise, the true north strong and free. From far and wide, O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. God keep our land, glorious and free. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee.
Well done. A little bit live. Please join me in a toast to the Queen. And to Canada. And to Rotary. Gotcha. And please bow your heads. As we share this meal today, excuse me, help us remember how fortunate we are to live in a country as prosperous as Canada. Help us also remember that as Rotarians, our motto is service above self, and to live this motto in each and every day of our lives. Help us remember our 6 areas of focus: promoting peace, fighting disease, clean water, sanitation and hygiene, saving mothers and children, supporting education, and growing economies. Please help us to be generous with our many gifts as we share this meal and fellowship today, and to be always mindful of those who are not as blessed. Amen. Amen. If you are a Rotarian and you have a guest today, please introduce him or her. None?
Oh, wait, I have a guest, sorry.
Oh,
I was just waiting to see
Allison.
what other people were going to do. This is Karen Spencer, the Executive Director of Family and Children's Services.
Ah, Karen, welcome.
Thank you.
And Judy, have we got any other guests?
Just Alan Sharpe, our speaker today.
Who will be formally introduced later. Please join me in welcoming our guest. Alan and Karen, please lead the way to the buffet and enjoy your meal.
Go ahead. I think it's perfect.
Get mine. Just so you know, no, I don't know. Jack Yes, that's right.
I jumped on a charter. He used to play. Oh my God. He was like a basement
I think we signed
You're looking well. Smooth transition. When did you join?
Yeah, always up in everybody make sure That's when we run into
branding all over.
I thought it was Westmount, and then I talked to the guy
No, I got it today.
Are you a good golfer? No.
She's being humble. She's a great putter.
Yeah, if she gets on the green, right?
That's everybody else's responsibility.
I played golf for the first time in my life.
What do you think of
The David Johnson Research and Technology Park, they have their annual golf tournament. There, they gave us $10,000. Yeah, so I went up there to speak, thank them on behalf of the Women's Crisis Services Foundation. And one of the organizers, Mike Ferrera, he's actually talked to he runs the technology park. He asked me if I would play in his course. I've never played golf before, so I played golf on Friday. It was a 6-hour game. And as the day wore on, Mike says to me, "This is a good game for getting angry." You've probably never been as angry because I'm I was missing the ball, knocking it over real hard, losing balls, going in the water, you know. No, and we were kind of kidding around. I felt like getting up behind the microphone saying, "I'm really grateful to be here for Women's Crisis Services. I had a great time. I've never had so much fun. Thank you for your generosity. I really appreciate it." 6 hours. I mean, wow.
Yeah, that's what she wants. Charity.
I would do it if it was raising money. Sure, absolutely. Yeah. So hard. You have no idea. It's so hard.
Good.
Wow.
Oh, is that right? Well, I didn't know that.
We're opposite each other.
See you the other day.
So the same people might not have, they never got to.
No, there is dessert out.
Oh, I must have. Just figured, hey, kind of what can you do? You notice we didn't have to ask you twice. No. You know what, I'll wait just a minute. How about you?
I'm gonna wait also.
Well, just let you know, I'm heading for it.
But not the next.
We can come back to this.
Oh, right.
Funny story, last night, my daughter was playing back in Calgary on West Street. Landing at 6:45.
Oh, boy.
Like we were at 7 o'clock, so I go out there.
Nerves are on.
They're ready to make the final, a small plane added left to run back out, so the plane goes back up again, and the storm rolls. So
Boy.
now they got thunder and lightning. Circle few times, I kind of went to London.
Oh, you're kidding. So you have to go to London?
No, she texted me, so I said, I'm going home. I went to London, and it's 3 years old. 7 gallons of storm. So I ended up going, oh, 9 o'clock. So I go back out there. She said that people on the glass, some of them were so upset.
I remember, like you're gonna change the weather.
And people were just busy as stuff jumping in for,
So were they able to get off?
Yeah, I would have preferred that, yeah. Why couldn't they just land and we all die?
There'd be a lot less anger.
one guy was a man, and nothing to get off the plane. And I looked at him and said, you know, because you know what, you're going there, because it's important, but yeah.
Hopefully there was a movie.
No.
No? Why is that? Water?
Yeah, they're starting to investigate airlines now because of the incredibly short
Size of the plane.
We flew last week on the Transat, and my knees were on. And luckily, people weren't from the seaside.
What would you do?
When I flew to Atlanta for the conference, I paid extra to make sure that we were all of a sudden she starts doing
I'm surprised how short the flight was. Only a couple hours.
Thank you. Because I read for everyone you work.
Last week to the watch a movie and read a little bit.
Coming home, I always hear your voice is long.
After that treatment,
It was funny because we had it's like,
went back to catch the ball, where the ball flew over the fence. Oh, yeah.
I would've went to the Dominican.
And umpire took the turn inside, with the guy running around the base.
Oh, yeah.
And the players are all standing there looking at the
The
unison, and like after
3 or 4 more weeks, I was at the Dominican, I was like,
He almost jumped over the fence.
well, I guess, I don't know if it's, they spray differently.
Well, they're afraid you might get Zika virus or something.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Hepatitis.
Probably.
We had nothing to do with
Yeah, I know, that must be.
No, wait.
When were you there?
Oh, really?
I don't think any of the umpires through this amount. And the resort was actually Iowa South.
Oh, really?
So we played them in stretch.
What was it? What's the island? I remember looking at something about that, and it was just off.
Hail Laventado. Beautiful. Enjoy it.
All right. So the whole island is a resort. Lots of stuff to do.
No.
Just hanging around.
Well, it's work, we know it.
Yeah.
Great pool, great water.
Yeah, when I go down there, that's normally what I do.
And the week
The
goes
beach
like,
is what I'm there for, it's warm from the beach.
the other guy goes, oh, we got a whole week of work with him. I should be happy with one.
She notices that you take to it. She takes it.
Yes.
I had a buddy in Britain, he said when he goes on vacation, he takes a check for it.
Not even a change of air.
No, why?
Spares and everything. I watched the big labor spare and everything. It's on mine.
Now on, you took one.
I did.
Yeah, well, now on, when I'm on the main course run. I know I'm
It is.
slowly up to the
I should have got two.
You have room on that.
Yeah, yeah.
No, they don't. So where were you playing golf?
I'm not sure. It was started getting more. My line must have been the feeling.
Doesn't it the same day they leave off?
Did you lose many balls there? Not bad. Got a bunch of protected areas. Oh, really? Oh, that's a good round.
You had humble pie before you called July and August.
Yeah, I had a fight. Behind the 8 ball, so the only hammer bus and 10 people.
Either gonna go really well, or you have to do it.
You're going to go get the tickets and you get to choose the 3.
Hey. Last week. Ah. Scandal.
3 random tickets.
How many times? We don't allow her.
It's okay.
That's the only way I would drink.
And all that refreshing.
It's a nice Okay, I think we'll continue on with the meeting. We'll start with some announcements, beginning with birthdays. Greg, Bobby, I think you've got a birthday coming up this month, don't you?
Yep, next week.
We won't mention a number, but 15, does that sound right? August 15? And one of our honorary members, Joe McDonald, has a birthday on August the 10th. I don't know if all of you saw the email that went out. Joe just lost his wife, Joan, recently, in the last few weeks. So if any of you know Joe, it wouldn't hurt to send him a birthday greeting on the 10th and might cheer him up a little bit. Wedding anniversaries, John Thompson, did you remember? He's got his mouth full. You look like you were.
Today's the 2nd and I remembered.
Okay. Well done, because you would have been reminded. And Brad and Tammy Swanson, 1992. They've been together for quite a while. Club anniversaries, John Villimer. Did you know this is your 20th anniversary, John? Well done, and Ian Robertson also, not his 20th, but he was inducted on August the 2nd, the year 2000. Upcoming meetings, so a reminder, next week, our meeting here on Wednesday is canceled. We're doing the horseshoe tournament at Fish Fry at the Waterloo Knights, thanks to Jack. It starts at 5:30. I think the plan is for the Fish Fry, the club will cover the members' cost for the Fish Fry. But if you bring a guest, we'd ask that you pay cash for the guest, so that we don't have to do all the accounting for that. So If you're a member, we will pay for your meal, but if you bring a guest, then please pay for their meal at the Knights of Columbus. Anything else I haven't thought of, Jack? Starts at 5:30.
They sent the rules out, so no chewing tobacco. That will be enforced. And who's Sergeant at Arms next week?
Judy and Jairus. So.
Oh well, they will. They'll be. Hopefully, you'll be there. And if there's any debate on whether it's a leaner or not,
oh, they have to regulate that.
Yeah, their ruling is final.
And no throwing overhand, I guess.
Never works. I think classic cars are that night.
So remember that, for no meeting here next Wednesday. The fish fry and horseshoes is Friday night at the Knights of Columbus in Waterloo. Yes, Jerome.
I believe there's classic cars there that night as well.
Oh, good.
So there's,
Awesome.
you can have walk around with cars as well.
Some classic individuals and classic cars as well. Thanks to Jack and Mark Engel for arranging the Boathouse get-together last Wednesday. I thought it went great. We had a good turnout, nice setting on the patio there. I think that's something we'll probably try to do probably on a regular basis, maybe going forward. Next summer we'll try the same thing. I enjoyed it. I thought it was a real nice day, and we had a good time on the patio. Lots of people showed up. So thanks, guys, for putting that together. We have some new member information. So if you haven't met Julie Powell, you should. She's the Director of Leadership Development at St. Mary's Hospital Foundation. And she comes from the Norfolk Sunrise Club, so she's a transfer in. And unlike the NHL, we don't have to give a player back. We just, there's no player to be named later. She's a free agent, and we signed her. It was very expensive, but we got her. So if you haven't said hello to Julie, please do. And Julie, I'm sure we've got some chairs of some committees in the room. They'll probably be chasing you around over the next few weeks to enlist your services on at least one of the committees. But if you're a chair, just give Julie a chance to catch her breath and give her at least a week before you can inundate her to be on your committee. Other membership news, Spencer Ewell has decided that he's swamped at work and he's got some things happening at home, so he's decided to take a leave of absence for about a year. He's just way too busy to make the meetings, and also he was on the board of directors also. So he's going to step back for a year, and he said maybe next summer he's going to look at it again, and he says he's planning to come back between next July and the following January. So we haven't lost him. He's just swamped with stuff right now and having a hard time being a good Rotarian. So he thought the best thing to do was to step back a little bit. So that's it's good news that he's sticking around. And the other good news is that Brad Enns has agreed to take his position on the foundation board. Brad will be in charge of new initiatives. So that was Spencer's role. So if you've got any ideas on new initiatives, talk to Brad. And Brad's going to join us at our next meeting later this month. September 23rd is the Rotary District 7080 conference. It's going to be held at the Mississauga Living Arts Center. So if you haven't been to one of those, one of the district conferences, you should attend. They're very educational. I think the theme is, I should have written it down, but I think the theme has something to do with peace through music, so there's a very musical theme. But you can look up that information on the district website. So if you just Google District 7080, you can get all the information on that. September 23rd. Is there any other information or club business that we should deal with? Oh yeah, Troy.
I just put the Pogo Kitchener Kids with Cancer Run volunteer information on the tables. I sent an email earlier today. We had, I think, 5 or 6 of us last year help volunteer for the day of the run. Just giving out water to and medals out at the end of the race, different things. They're making it a full marathon, I believe, this year, one part of it, so we need a couple more volunteers. I think they're looking for 75. They have around 60 right now, so they're still trying to finish off their volunteers. So anyone who can be there, September 10th. The race starts at 9, so he said probably around 8 if there are marshals or stuff like that. But once we know some numbers, they'll get a better idea of exactly what times.
Same thing.
Yeah, same place at the Regional Museum on Homer Watson and Huron Road there.
Yeah, not a difficult day and lots of fun. It's very well organized. It was well attended. We had several members there last year. Had a really good time, and not hard work. Basically, after the beginning, you just hand people water as they run by, and you don't have to do a lot. And a great day. Great day.
So
if
there's
you
a
can
sign-up
help
sheet
out-
at the front if you can just, I'll leave there for the next couple weeks, just fill your name in and let them know.
And it's a run for cancer, so all the net proceeds go to support children's cancer, I think.
Yeah.
I think that's it for announcements. 50-50, get your tickets out. We have a whopping $129. And the first one to lose is going to be number 717.
Yeah, 6 numbers.
There she goes again. The first one to lose.
The president has veto powers.
Every week.
If I can put it way up here so you don't see.
You wouldn't dare.
I'll get you to buy me a lottery ticket.
See, you don't need to be embarrassed. You didn't win.
We feel bad. Thanks for your donation, Laura. We appreciate it. 689. 689. Not me. Oh, Karen.
Or is it Judy? It might be
Oh, you can
Judy.
sort that out with Judy. If you lose, it's Judy. Judy lost.
Doesn't matter.
And 671. Rick, all right.
It'll be the same result, so it's, yeah. I don't think it really matters. Probably look at it.
You still would go. There we go. Oh, there we go. Not even great. Thank you for your donation. Next on the list is Rotary Trivia. We have a nice Inniskillen Riesling Pinot Grigio for those of you who can answer this question. When Rotary began its fight against polio, how many children were contracting polio every day? 1985. Per day. Per day.
175.
300.
Nope.
722.
You got to get closer than that.
As good as a hot air cooler.
It's a round number.
10,000 or something like that?
No.
1,000 a day.
1 million.
Jack got it. Well done, Jack. 1,000 kids per day were contracting polio, so 365,000 a year. And last year we had 5 cases. For this year so far, 5 cases. So that's pretty good progress, I would say.
Trish is away. I'll have that done before she.
Don't drink it on the way home, Sam.
Meet you in the parking lot.
Jack will meet you in the parking lot.
I got
Yeah.
an empty glass here.
I made it nice and warm so we wouldn't want to have it on the way home. So as you heard today, our speaker is Alan Sharpe. Nathan, he's back there. Nathan is going to formally introduce.
So, Alan Sharpe didn't know he wanted to help abused women and children as a career until he had first fought in the Falkland War, lived in a snow hole, eaten a hard-boiled penguin egg, and slept through a live performance of Swan Lake. Alan is currently the Fund Development Manager at Women's Crisis Services of Waterloo Region. He manages a team that raises funds to help the hundreds of women and children in our region who flee domestic violence each year. Alan has spent the past 20 years helping non-profit organizations raise awareness and raise money for their causes. Alan has taught fundraising at conferences worldwide, and he has written 6 books about fundraising. Please join me in welcoming Alan.
This better be good after that, huh? Not long ago, there was a woman that came to Anselma House in Kitchener, which is our emergency shelter. She had come straight from the hospital after being brutally assaulted. She did not have an overnight bag. She did not have a phone. She didn't have a watch. She didn't have a purse. She had no possessions. The only thing she had was what the clothes she was wearing, and they were hospital scrubs. All of her clothing had been seized by the police as evidence against her attacker, her husband. I work for a registered charity here in the city. It's called Women's Crisis Services of Waterloo Region. We operate 2 emergency shelters, one in Kitchener called Selma House, one in Cambridge called, I'm having to look at my notes, I shouldn't have to look at my notes for that, Haven House in Cambridge. We also operate a regional outreach program where our workers go into the community and work with women that are feeling that they're at risk but aren't ready quite yet to move into the shelter. We're the only agency of our kind in the region that helps women and children who are victims of domestic abuse. Now, if today is at all typical, Waterloo Regional police officers will respond to 16 calls about domestic violence. So they'll, in one day, 24 hours, they will knock on the door, ring the doorbell of a home or an apartment because a woman in the home is afraid for her life or the life of her children because of her boyfriend or husband or intimate partner or even a family member. We have a crisis line, and if today is at all typical, we will get 8 phone calls of women in various stages of distress calling our crisis line because they need help. So 16 police responses a day. That amounts to, if you can do the math, that's 117 a week, 508 a month, 6,100 responses a year in our region. The police going out, responding to a call about a domestic violence incident. So I'm here to talk to you about what is domestic abuse and what you can do about it. I'm a fundraiser, so I have to talk about what you can do about it. So what is domestic abuse? Well, all forms of abuse against women are attempts to maintain power or control over the thoughts or beliefs or behavior of a woman by creating fear and dependency. Abuse against women can be physical, and it can also be non-physical. One of the myths that we come across in our work, people think that domestic abuse is just domestic violence. They're kind of synonymous, but there can be all sorts of abuse that are not physical, that are not violent. Abuse includes emotional, physical, psychological, sexual, financial, verbal, and spiritual abuse. It's a pretty big spectrum. And abusers often use their children and their family pets to frighten and bully the significant woman in their life. All forms of abuse result in the woman feeling powerless, unequal, and unsafe. And a loss of her dignity is a further outcome. Women that are abused in their home by somebody that is close to them change their behavior, they change their preferences, they change their friends, they change the choices that they make for fear of the consequences that they'll face from their abusive partner. Let me just give you a couple of examples of signs of abuse. We're not going to go into a big sociological treatise here, but an obvious one would be physical assault. That's a type of domestic abuse. Threats of violence or harm. You see what I mean? It's not all physical. I grew up in a home where both of my parents were drunks, and they never hit me and abused me, but I certainly had the threat of them splitting up, leaving, and I know what it was like to grow up in fear of things that were other than physical. Signs of abuse would include unkept promises to change, the man controlling all the money in the marriage, isolation from family and friends. You get the idea. There's all kinds of abuse. I'm just going to go through a couple of characteristics of abusers. A typical abuser will blame partners for their own abusive behavior. They tend to be very jealous and possessive of their partner. They have low self-esteem, and they find the need to control and manipulate their partner using violence or threats. So how can you help? Well, let me tell you what it is that Women's Crisis Services does, and you'll get an idea. We run a 24-hour crisis support line. So 24 hours a day, we have a staffer on duty who's ready to answer the phone if a woman or a man calls in and they need help. It's a crisis line, but people also can call in just if they have an issue that they want to discuss. They might not feel that they are in crisis, but they may need answers to questions. We run a 24-hour line. We also have a residential program. So this is what you probably think of when you hear the phrase Women's Crisis Services of Waterloo Region. You probably think Anselma House and you think Haven House. These are buildings, facilities where we house and feed and nurture and protect and help women and children that are fleeing domestic abuse. Our residential program is open to women that are 16 years of age or older, whether they have children or not. And women are eligible if they're experiencing any form of abuse in an intimate or familial relationship. So it's either a boyfriend, girlfriend, husband, wife, or it could be a family member that's causing the abuse. Once the women are at the shelter, the support continues. We help them with their legal needs. Sometimes their partner will be facing criminal charges. They might have a legal need to get legal separation or a restraining order against their partner. We help them line up those resources. We help them with housing. We help them find a safe place to live and a clean, affordable place to live. And we help them with any parenting skills that they might need. Children tend to get neglected when the mother is being abused. They're in survival mode. We offer a food and nutritional program. We have a child and youth program. And we also help women develop what we call a safety plan so they can be sensible and safe about how they interact in the community if their abuser is still in the community. At any given time, around half of the people in our shelter are children. We have children as young as a couple of months old. We have children in diapers. We have toddlers. We have young kids. Half of our population is children. So we have a child and youth program that's specifically focused on helping children that have been growing up and living in an environment where dad or a boyfriend was abusing their mom. So it's our experience and the experience of other shelters across Canada that abuse is a learned behavior. Lots of men who abuse their wives or girlfriends learned it at home growing up as a kid. Their dad did it, their brother did it, their uncle did it, they saw it, they learned it. And so children grow up in that kind of a home today. We help to intervene so that we can teach those kids this is not the right way to treat people in your life. We also help them with educational groups, recreation, therapy. We also help them with safety planning, helping children of the women that we help learn how to be safe online and safe in their community. And we also have an outreach program where rather than waiting for women to call us, we actually go out into the community and we can meet with women in the community who might be ready to move to the shelter, might be thinking about it. And also we help women that have been in the shelter and are now out on their own. We help them integrate into the community, and we don't have a waiting list for the outreach program. So how can you help? This is the good part. You as Rotarians and as individual people in our community who care about women and children that are abused, you're vital to our success because donations are vital to our success. We get about 82% of our funding from the provincial government, and the remaining percentage we raise ourselves. We raise it through fundraising events, individual donations, monthly donations, online donations, many ways. Women's Crisis Services of Waterloo Region receives provincial funding to provide staffing for 58 beds in Cambridge and in Kitchener. But we almost always have 64 beds full. I'll just repeat that. We get funding from the province for 58 beds, but we almost always have 64 beds full. In other words, we're always helping more women and children than we have budget for. So that's why there's the need for fundraising and for a person like me. So your financial support individually or as a club keeps our crisis support line open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Your donations provide a safe place for women and their children to stay. Your generosity helps our workers offer special services to the children and youth that we help. And your support also helps women learn to cook nutritious meals, find safe and affordable housing, receive help with addiction and mental health issues, and look for work. And if you remember back to the year 2010, when Anselma House was being rebuilt, your club gave us a large donation. Remember how much it was? I know how much it was, but your club gave us a big donation to help further the building of Anselma House. We're very grateful to you for it. I'm going to pause here for a minute for a Q&A, and then I'm just going to make some concluding remarks. Are there any questions? Yes, Ed?
You said you've got about 58 funded beds and 64 beds, actual beds. Does that include the children, or are the children over and above that?
Listen, that would include the children.
Okay.
Yeah, we have cribs as well, but yeah, those beds would be for children and mothers. We actually have 90 beds total.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So, I mean, we moved, so in about 10 years ago, we built Anselma House, a new facility, and we overbuilt so that we would have more beds than we needed. And we did the same with Haven House. We built more beds than we needed. So we have beds that are empty because we kind of overbuilt. We built over capacity.
Yeah.
And we don't have the funding to fund every single person in the facility.
And I want to hear about the penguin egg, hard-boiled penguin egg.
Oh, the hard-boiled penguin egg. So when I was 16 years old, I ran away from home and I joined the British Royal Marine Commandos. And I served for a year in the Falkland Islands, 1979. This is before the war. And in the Falkland Islands, they have millions and millions of penguins. And we had to take survival training in the event that we ever had to run away from the capital and live off the land. So we did survival training where we had to boil a penguin egg. They said it looks like a dead man's eye when it's boiled. You can see, instead of having an egg white, it's clear. You can see right through the yolk. Really? The yolk is gray and the outside is kind of this translucent. It's kind of grotesque. It tastes delicious, very salty. If you ever have a chance to try one.
Yeah.
Yes, Graham.
Getting back to while you're here.
You're off topic again.
A woman that comes into your center, she's obviously got the point where she had to have her spouse or other one either arrested, humiliated in his mind, upset. Now, when she goes back out again, what's the percentage of women that get abused again by the same individual?
So we have a scale. It's a lethality scale. When a woman comes to our shelter, we sit down with her and we take her through a questionnaire. And we ask her such questions as, your boyfriend, your husband, has he attempted suicide? Has he threatened suicide? Has he ever hurt your pet? Has he ever strangled you? And there are certain red flags, and if there are more than a couple of those red flags, the lethality factor is really, really high. An example would be if he hurts pets, animals, if he strangled you, and if he's attempted suicide, and if he's unemployed. There are a couple of real big red flags. And so if a woman comes to our shelter with that kind of lethality index, we normally place her in a shelter outside of our region, anonymously, discreetly, so her boyfriend or her husband has no idea where she is. And we also have women coming to our shelter from outside the region, from Guelph, London, Hamilton, because they can't stay in that community. But if a woman does not meet that criteria, but she ends up leaving our shelter and getting an apartment and getting a job, there are all sorts of safety measures that we take, including restraining orders through the courts. And it could be that the boyfriend or husband is on probation or is being watched. So we do take steps to make sure that the women are as safe as we can. Yeah.
What's the average length of stay for a woman or a family?
So the average length of stay is 8 weeks. Some stay a little bit longer, some stay a little bit less, but it takes 8 weeks generally for a woman to come to terms with her trauma and also come to terms with kind of where she is in life. Some women need help with addiction, getting over addictions. Some of them have mental health issues where they need a little bit of coaching and nurturing and getting ready. And it takes about 8 weeks to find an apartment and get a job and get all the legal stuff together in case there are restraining orders and things like that.
So often the woman would move to a different home after they leave. Is that correct? Like an apartment of some kind? Or?
Yes, yeah. Most women who leave our shelter move into independent living away from their abuser. Some of them do leave and go back.
And is there some way that they could go home to their original home and they can force the abuser to leave the home, or does that not happen?
I mean, that might be possible.
But it doesn't really.
Can everybody hear the questions?
Yeah.
Yes. That might be possible. That would not be something that we would be dealing with generally in terms of the legality of it, but certainly I would imagine that's something that we would discourage. we would discourage a woman to go back and force her abuser to leave. It would just be another reason that he would have another chip on his shoulder.
Yeah.
But every case is different.
First, an anecdote and then a question, if I may. Many years ago, I worked at United Way, and in the early days when I worked at United Way, there was this organization came to us and said, there's a bit of a problem in our community, and we're starting this organization called Anselma House. And that was when it was on Duke Street, I believe. And the general consensus of many of the volunteers who served, it's the late 70s, early 80s, I believe, when that started, was, why would we need that? Our community doesn't have that problem. Like, that was the feeling not that long ago when you look at it and say, well, you see that on TV, watch the Buffalo News, Toronto News, and that. And so they had 8 beds, I believe, the first year, and their occupancy in the very first year was around 115, 120%. So the numbers are bigger, the trend's the same. So my question is, if you don't have funding for more than 58 beds, even though you have the capital, you have the bed there or whatever, do you turn people away, or what happens?
We turn people away, we turn women away if it's safe to do so. If a woman came to our shelter and she was high on the lethality scale, in other words, the risk of her going back to her house or apartment, she was going to be killed, then we would take her in. We would take her in, and we would find a way for her to maybe be moved to another shelter. We would never turn a woman away if we thought that her life was at risk. Sometimes it's possible to work with a situation where they don't have to come in right away. They might have friends, they might have family, they might have a brother or a cousin, a mom and dad that they can go stay with, as opposed to coming to the shelter. There might be another option.
If you're funded for 58 beds, am I correct in assuming there's a chance that the occupancy might be 101% of that or higher?
Sort of, our math isn't very good at lunchtime.
Oh, okay, no, like if you have a bigger demand than you have the funding for.
That's true.
Therefore, the fundraising is even more crucial.
Absolutely, yeah. Absolutely, it's realistic to say that the funds that you donate to Women's Crisis Services actually help a woman and a child who is fleeing domestic abuse in a very tangible way.
You indicated the age starts at 16 and that it could be a familial situation where violence. Would that mean that a teenager who's having difficulty with parents would also be eligible to come in?
Yes. Yeah. It might be a young woman, it might be her uncle who's not working, is at home and abuses her in some way. Yeah. It might be a mother too. Yes.
Do you involve yourself or work with organizations that counsel the abuser?
I don't know the answer to that. I think it's a great idea. I'm new in the job. I've been on the job for 4 weeks. I know that we have a good working relationship with the White Ribbon Campaign, which is a male-run organization that champions the cause of women that are abused. I know that when I've learned about our programming, that's not something that is immediately part of our programming. Our focus is on the woman and her children. So we have a clinical psychologist, we have a nurse practitioner, we work with Family and Children's Services. They have an office in our facility, so we work with many groups in the region, but our focus is on helping the woman and her child. And I'm pretty sure we wouldn't be working with the abuser because there's a conflict of interest there. Yeah.
Just further to John's comment, I worked at Anselm House as well in 1995 for about 5 years in his job. And in those days, men were not, there were no men on the board, there were no male staff. It was very women-centered, and I think in the early days from when John is talking about, it was probably a grassroots kind of activity for women to support women. And I'm really glad to see that men are involved, because I think it isn't a woman's issue, it's an everybody's issue. And the more men that are involved in that issue, I think an understanding what all of those component parts are that you're talking about, I think there's a better chance that we can either eliminate or at least alleviate it. So I'm glad to see they're hiring men now.
So am I. As far as I understand it, our Women's Crisis Services of Waterloo region is one of the most progressive, innovative women's shelters in Canada.
And when they move to the community, who pays for their accommodation? Education Act.
So when a woman leaves one of our shelters and goes into the community, she probably qualifies for subsidized rent that she would get from, I think it's Ontario ODP or ODSP. It's Ontario, it's a provincially funded program that helps supplement rent. Yeah, she'd be like high on the list. She'd be at the top of the line for that.
Sorry, just to add to that, there's a woman in our community that gathers furniture and goods from people that are generous to provide them. And she has set up probably close to 500 women coming out of the shelters.
I was fundraising for them.
Yes, you did.
Horizon.
Yes.
Yeah.
Shoppers Drug Mart, between you and Maria, supported Linda's operation for a few years, yeah.
I think there was another hand up. Yes.
Where do the pets go when the families are taken in and they have a pet at home? Where do you, with the dog or the cat, or where do they go?
We work with the local Humane Society, and if, it's a real barrier for women to come to our shelter if they think that their pet is going to be left in the home with the abuser, because many abusers threaten to kill the pet, or they abuse the pet, and so we don't want women not coming to the shelter because they're afraid of their pet. So legally, we remove the pet from the home, or we have the pet removed from the home legally and taken to the Humane Society where it's put in a foster home. It's not put up for adoption or anything like that. They have foster parents who take care of children like that. Are you looking over my shoulder?
Yeah, so you're ready. I think that's our.
So I'm just gonna. No, that's it. I think we're done. No pressure, huh? Just kind of standing there.
If you could just.
So, Alan, on behalf of our club, I want to say a tremendous thank you for coming out and speaking with us today. I wanted to say thank you for two things. First of all, for the great work that you and your organization are doing in our community, and secondly, for communicating, bringing the message out to the community about the valuable work that you do, including here to our club today. And we very much appreciate learning about the issues that you've enlightened us on today. In thanks for your appearance with us today, our club contributes to a very valuable program called Operation Eyesight. And on your behalf, we have made a donation to that organization for them to fund corrective eye surgery for an individual in a third world country. And we would like to present to you this certificate, just acknowledging our thanks in that regard.
Thank you.
Very good. Thank you.
Ed, photo. Let's get a quick photo.
Yeah, we'll
Good after?
release everybody in the. So, great talk, Alan. Thank you very much for coming today. Great, very informative. So, if there's nothing else for the good of Rotary, the meeting is adjourned.
Yes, we do.
So, Alan, if you would